Christensen with Payson, Mayor Camp with Murray. You have Debbie Larray with Orem. For staff, we have Roger, Laurie, Josh, and Kim, and myself.
So, let's see.
Do you need me to repeat it?
Yeah, I think I got Blair and Debbie and Brett and Mayor Camp and Josh. Well, Josh is okay. I think that gives us a
quorum.
Quorum.
And Mayor Camp is one of the same, right?
Right.
Sorry. Yeah. Mayor. Okay, so are you ready to start then?
Can we just confirm that we have the link for the YouTube video available before we get started?
Okay, very good.
It's like Robin Meekum with Centerville is joining.
Did you give it to Lexi, Roger, or Aubrey?
Of course. Yeah, Lexi's got it, but like as of 20 seconds ago or something.
Yeah, she's passing it on to Aubrey because she has an appointment this morning, so I didn't know. Yeah, so you might want to send it to Aubrey as well.
Aaron Leach also joined us. He's our Chief Operating Officer.
Okay. So did we get the link set up?
Yep. I mean, it's being broadcast for our YouTube channel, so it's available to anybody without a link, but just for the purposes of posting it, where we post our meeting information, it's being posted right now.
And it does look like it's up on the website now, so I think we're good to proceed.
Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. My name is Paul Isaac. I'm filling in for Wayne this morning. Obviously, he, like everyone else, is pretty busy with everything going on with COVID and protests and so forth. So, but I'm glad to be here, and we'll begin by having a motion for approval of the minutes.
This is Blair Camp. I move approval of the minutes for let's see, what meeting was that?
April 13th.
April 13th.
The April 13th meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there a second?
I can second it. This is Debbie.
Very good. Did you get that, Krista?
I did.
Okay. Without objection from anyone in the group, the minutes are approved. Is there any objection? Thank you. We'll now go to item number 3, which is a public hearing to allow public comment regarding the tentative fiscal budget for 2021. Is that correct? For Utopia. And then on the docket, we have a resolution of approving the annual budget for Utopia. So is there a motion to open the public hearing? But prior to doing that, is there any type of presentation that Lori, you'd like to give to the board?
Would.
Thank you, Lori.
I want to go through a few of the highlights of the fiscal year, the final fiscal year 2021 budget. Revenues are up 11% as the UIA payments to Utopia increase. These two graphs right here show consistency between fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2021. The blue section of the pie chart shows that the revenue from UIA for the service contract and the management fees make up almost half of the total Utopia budget. The tentative budget that we presented in April is the only difference between the tentative budget and this final budget is that in the tentative budget, we hadn't allocated or yet approved the requested new positions. So instead of a a $615,000 revenue over expenditures. That's now 35,400. And you'll see that later in the presentation. But I wanted to point out that that's the only major difference between the tentative budget, which was presented in April, and this budget today. In Utopia, the other half, the other 50% of budgeted revenue is made up of access fees. There's not a lot of change from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021. If you jump to the next page, operating expenditures for UIA are up by 6%. There are 5 new positions added. There were 11 positions requested and 5 approved. Those 5 include a development operations manager for the operations management department, a field dispatcher to dispatch our field service technicians, a warehouse technician, an additional field services technician, and a smart cities engineer. Some of the other requested FTE were not approved for the beginning of the fiscal year 2021 budget. We wanted to wait and see what the need was for those additional positions. So this brings our total FTE count from 73 to 78. You'll remember that last year it jumped quite a bit when we brought our Blue Stakes locating in-house. We added 11 positions there. A little further down the page.
And just a quick comment on that. I'd say it's likely we're going to need to add some during the year and become part of a revised budget later. But to Laurie's point, we're trying to start this as lean as possible and kind of do those as needed versus throwing in everything up front and moving on new positions. We are growing very, very fast, so there's a constant pressure against how much work there is to do and how much staff we have, but we're increasingly getting lean with our resources relative to the size of the network and the number of customers we have, and we want to continue that and continue to getting a better economy of scale. But you know, at some point in time, the pain point gets too much, and we just have to add a position here and there.
Okay, a little further down the page, operating expenditures have increased by $731,600. About $440,000 of that is related to the 5 new positions. We've included 4% for either increases in insurance. We look at our health insurance and benefits in December and January of each year, or for salary increases. $170,000, this is the increase over budget for fiscal year 2020. We're adding $170,000 for overtime, commissions, etc. These were paid in fiscal year 2020. When we look back at what was budgeted, we actually hadn't budgeted for those, especially overtime, in our original budget for 2020. Again, as we grow and as we get bigger, before we consider hiring FTEs, we do allow overtime for our employees, especially those out in the field. An additional $435,000 for 6 months of salaries and benefits for locators. If you recall, we brought our locators on in January of the current year, of fiscal year, of calendar year 2020. We only had our contract with State Center Locating for 6 months of fiscal year 2020, so that goes away for fiscal year 2021. And then miscellaneous 17,000 brings us to the total increase in operating expenditures of 731,600. You jump to the next page. I just wanted to show you the makeup of Utopia's operating expenditures. For calendar year 2021, salaries, wages, and benefits make up about 62% of the total budget. It was 55% in fiscal year 2020. Again, I believe that that increase for 2021 is having our blue staking personnel in-house. So this probably isn't a lot different than a lot of the city budgets. Most of our expenditures are in our personnel and our people. If we jump to the next page, I have attached the final proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. I'll go through it quickly. Total revenues, 13,897,200. Our administrative budget is 973,900. You jump to the next page, you'll see that we have broken out a lot of the different functions of the departments. We had finance and accounting and information technology included in administration. In prior years, we're breaking that out so that we can have more accountability from the different departments. On the next page, you'll see that we have broken out customer service from marketing and sales. Our marketing budget is $1.6 million. About 400,000 of that is in advertising. Going on to the next page, we have operations management. We have also broken that out into several budgets, including warehouse and inventory management. You jump to the next page. We still have our network operating center and our field services budget. And then on the next page, our new Blue Stakes locating department.
Huh.
We have network engineering. On the next page is outside plant construction. And we have pulled a lot of this budget apart to create, if you look at the next page, engineering both for outside plant and inside plant. We've separated those out into two distinct departments. The next page would be our non-departmental costs. These are costs that are shared by all of the personnel in Utopia. And then the final page shows the financing and capital portion of our budget. Debt service is about $15 million. That is offset by the contribution from our member cities. Total expenditures for Utopia, $13,861,800. We have revenues over expenditures of $35,400. Utopia is an enterprise fund, so we are showing revenue over expenditures. We could just as easily show that as a contribution to fund balance if we wanted to show a completely budgeted, completely balanced budget. That's all I have, Paul, unless there are questions.
Very good. Before we open the public hearing, are there any questions from the board for Laura? For Lori, I meant.
Okay.
I have one. You had said overtime and commissions. Is commissions for like salespeople, or can you explain what the commissions involve?
The commissions, our customer service representatives have a target each year for or each month for sales that they're expected to hit, and when they hit those, they do get a commission. So it's an addition to their basic salaries. So that's largely for our customer service representatives.
Okay, thank you.
And it's on a sliding scale too, Debbie. So depending on where they hit every month.
Okay. Well, I'm all for rewarding really good high producers. I just wanted to make sure I just wanted to understand what that was. So thank you.
I have a question. I'm a little stressed about the fact that we lumped the insurance and the raises together, because the insurance I can support, but the raises I'll have trouble supporting, where we're not able to give any of our city employees raises. It's hard for me to vote for somebody else to have raises, but yet with the insurance, I would have been able to support that. So I'm sad that it was lumped together.
If I can respond to that, part of that reason is we don't do our negotiations for our insurance until January. So we don't know what our increase in our insurance costs will be.
Hmm.
I wanted to mention that.
So would you assume that the insurance, I mean, for purposes of the budget, I guess, you also don't know whether or not there is going to be an increase, I assume.
That's correct.
By the way, folks, if for the record, we should probably state your name so that if there is anybody with us, that they know who's speaking. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing then regarding the tentative fiscal year 2021 budget.
Paul, this is Kane. I would make a motion that we open the public hearing to discuss the fiscal year 2021 budget.
This is Debbie. I can second that.
Thank you, Debbie. Krista, could you do a roll call vote for us? Or would you like me to do that?
Yes, I can do that. That's fine.
Thank you.
Councilmember Debbie Luray,
Aye.
Adam Cowie,
Aye.
Kane Loader.
Aye.
I believe we have Jason on for Thomas Peterson. Is that correct? You know, it looks like he's trying to connect, so I'm going to skip him and I'll come back. Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilmember Robin Meekum.
Aye.
Let's see, do we have Councilmember Clint Morris?
Aye.
And I believe we have Brett Christensen on.
Aye.
Let's see. Jason,
Jason is at,
are you filling in for Thomas today?
he just sent a message that said he is unmuted, but he votes aye.
Okay.
He says he needs to be unmuted.
Oh, excuse me.
So sorry, who needs to be unmuted? Who is that?
Jason
Jason.
Roberts.
Yeah, this shows that he is unmuted.
Yeah. I can record his vote in the meantime.
Let's see, there's a phone number here that's muted. I'll unmute that. That might be him.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, well, I vote aye.
And then Paul Isaac.
And I vote aye as well.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. So the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here from the public to speak on this issue?
We had that available online as well as physically in the room. So just to confirm, there's no one has come from the public to our building to comment.
Can I ask a question on that? So how is the public, the remote, is it email that they're able to communicate?
I think
So
they
we posted that they could request credentials to participate in the Zoom. And so any requests would go to Krista. So she's just available to send them the credentials immediately to join remotely. And then the other option was to show up physically. So we had one request for credentials to participate, and they were given credentials. I don't think they've actually joined the meeting though.
Thank you.
Very good. Seeing or hearing no one that would like to address this issue, I'll now close the public hearing and bring it to the attention of consider resolution UT 2003.
Do we need a vote to close the public hearing first?
Oh, thank you. Without objection from the board, from anyone online, may I just suggest that we close the public hearing? Is there any objection?
Paul, I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Very good.
Okay.
Is there A second?
Brett Christensen will second that.
Thank you. Krista, could you take the roll call vote?
Debbie LeRae,
Aye.
Adam Cowie,
Aye.
Kane Motor,
Aye.
Jason Roberts,
Aye.
Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Robin Meekum,
Aye.
Clint Morris,
Aye.
Brett Christensen,
Aye.
and Paul Isaac.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. Now we can consider approval of resolution UT 2003, approving the annual budget for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2020 and ending June 30th, 2021. I'll refer to the board for a motion or comments.
I'd like to comment. This is Debbie. I share a similar concern with giving raises. We have not approved anything and for our city, and I think we need to be very judicious on what we do. So while I'm not opposed to insurance costs, knowing that's just the cost of doing business, I would be concerned about any sort of raise. I think we could certainly revisit that maybe in January to see if the economy and the strength is still coming through. But at this point, I'm also uncomfortable. And as I report back to my city council, I think I will get pushback from others if I approve that raise, knowing how we've had to not only tighten our budgets and let our employees know that that's not going to happen this year. And at some point it may, but until then, we kind of need to be very judicious. That's just my comment.
Yeah, Debbie, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's Robin Meekum from Centerville. I agree with that strongly. Like I said, putting them in, we don't even know what type of raises could be afforded them, that I would think we would need to know a percentage. And so I hate to turn the whole budget down, but there's no way I can vote for a yes when that's all lumped together and I have no idea what the raises are or the insurance. And I understand that you may need money for insurance in there, and that's great. But I don't think if it's not used for insurance, it goes to raises. I'm okay with re-looking at it again when we find out how we end up on the other side of this mess.
Is it possible that we, just a suggestion from my part, since we're doing this in the city, is it possible that we could go ahead and approve the budget with the caveat that those raises would not be allocated until the board reviews what the increase is going to be and so forth, and what the insurance costs are going to be? In other words, we hold off, we tell the staff to hold off on giving those raises until we understand a little bit more fully what the economy is going to do and so forth. That's the way we handled that in our city, with the intention that we're not going to give those raises, even though it's in the budget. We're not going to give those raises. Any kind of a motion to that effect might be appropriate.
Hey.
Debbie or Robin, does that satisfy you guys?
Yes, and I'm happy to
Paul.
revisit it, quarterly or at the end of the year. I just need to we need very judicious what we do with.
Yeah.
We just need to be wise, and I'd rather be cautious and set expectation that there won't be any raises. And then at some point, if we can, that's always a perk. But I'd rather under promise and then over deliver.
Right. Did I hear another comment?
I agree.
Yeah. Sorry, but this is Jason. Lori, do you have the breakout between what is insurance and what is raises at the very least? I would like to know. I'm guessing those two amounts, that's not a mystery in the budget.
Well, it is just knowing that we don't have any idea right now what our insurance increase will be, because we don't have a
I'm okay with that, but what was your assumptions to get the budget done? What were you guessing? And my guess is if it's anything like our budget, a 4% increase just for benefits, it's actually an 8% increase in benefit costs because they don't kick in until the middle of the year if it's anything like ours.
right.
What were the assumptions used? How much of that was raised and how much of that was insurance?
I based the increases on the same amount that we did last year. which was 3%.
3% for the raises, and then, and so anything remaining would have been
For insurance.
related to insurance increase. Okay.
Correct.
So does that mean a 1% insurance increase? Is that 3% for wages and the remaining 1%, or is it total benefit costs went up 4%, and so actually you're expecting more than 4% for benefits?
I based the benefits at 42% of the proposed salaries. So I just took a flat 42% of the proposed salaries for
Okay.
benefits.
So the raise for benefits will actually be, you're expecting it to be more than a 4% increase is how I would look at that.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't break those numbers out for you right now, but I can certainly send that out to you after this meeting. I understand you probably, yeah.
But basically you're saying 3% is what's in there for raises.
Correct. That's based on what was given in fiscal year 2020.
So I could.
Okay.
One suggestion, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but one suggestion we could make to the staff is that, again, once we approve the budget, but we don't approve the allocation of the budget for raises and insurance until we more fully understand what that is. I guess the staff's anticipating that if we approve the budget without any kind of an amendment like this, that those raises would have gone into an effect in July, right?
Yeah.
So couldn't we as a board, and I guess I'm asking this to maybe to our city attorney or to our attorney, couldn't we as a board suggest that we approve the budget, but that we do not approve allocation of these funds until we have more information regarding insurance and so forth? In other words, we just continue to pay salaries as they are now allocated and insurance, and then but continue to hold the money in reserve in the budget. So for example, July's money would be there, August's money would be there, depending on when we give the raise, and you'll probably have enough money at that point in time to cover the anticipated cost, if you will, in insurance. You understand where I'm going?
Hey, Paul, this is Jason one more time. Sorry, I'm not trying to hijack the conversation by any means. I guess part of my issue is I think right now we can take a guess as to why we would not give a raise. And I can think of, if you look at cities not giving raises right now, they're worried that their revenues aren't going to be what's anticipated. I do not believe that's the issue that I have a concern with at Utopia at this point. So the only other reason I could think of, I guess there are a couple others. One, we think it's higher than what the market should be. If we had a problem with that, I can understand that. Or two, because cities aren't getting it, we don't want to give it to Utopia. And with Utopia being a separate type of market, I'm not sure I would agree with that logic. If we're looking at the demand for fiber out there and some of the things that are happening, I'm not sure I personally agree with that. But I just like to say, I think most of the information's out there, with the exception of possibly the calculation of what sort of raises that we're planning on doing for the employees to make a decision now personally. At the same time, I would be okay with deferring them till later. That's just some of my thoughts.
If I could
if I can speak to that from Utopia's perspective. So demand for our service has gone up and demand in the industry has gone up. And so we are having, we sit in the middle of both, right? We in the past, we have at times adjusted what our increase was relative to what cities were doing. And at the same time, there are different pressures and influences on us from our ability to retain employees and be competitive in the industry. So from one perspective, we're busier than we've ever been, demand is up, and demand for people in the broadband industry is way up during this time. and also our revenues are in a good position. And on the UIA side of things, we did actually expedite and increase the amounts of money that we were paying back to the cities on our OPEX schedule from 3-year schedule down to a 2-year. So that was actually done in it to try to help alleviate some of the money burden that the organization is on the cities, and to potentially help cities with their own staff, their costs of staff, and the lack of revenue or the decrease in revenues due to sales tax decreases. So we do play on both sides. I mean, we definitely acknowledge who we are and the burden that we are to cities, and have used that as a watermark for where we should be from an increased perspective. At the same time, the things that influence cities and those decisions they don't really affect us the same, where we fall more on the industry side of things to make sure we have staff here and remain competitive. So we struggle with the same thing. It's like, well, where should we fall from our perspective? And probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, we do sit in that middle space. Wear a lot of hats here.
This is Robin Meekum again. So I am really excited. I was really excited with the UIA message today that we were going to get more money back. And so I appreciate that. But I do think it doesn't look good for the city, because in honesty, the reason I can't give my employees raises is because of the debt to Utopia. I mean, we're paying over $500,000 a year, and yet I'm looking at my employees and going, well, we gave their employees a raise, but you can't have one. And the other thing is, Jason brought up the economics. Right now, unemployment is so high that I don't know that giving raises is the time, but I'm more than glad to revisit it down the road. I just don't feel comfortable with it today.
This is Debbie. I'm okay with making sure that we have market friendly salaries. And I don't know if we've studied that to make sure that we are, as good as or close to what the market is paying. But I'm still also struggling with a COLA or some sort of merit. And not that I don't want to do that. I certainly do, but my debt's $2 to $3 million, so it's a lot more, and we're just having to cut everywhere. So I'm comfortable with market. If you have to retain someone, maybe make sure that we have the money to retain someone who's valuable, and there's always training expenses, making sure that that the market for that particular position. I don't want to lose good employees, but I also want to set the expectation that we're all tightening our belts. Maybe in a few months we can loosen them. Like I said, I'm really happy to look at this quarterly or at the end of the year to see if it merits. And I still rather set low expectations than people thinking that they will. I mean, we all know a lot of people have struggled, so we can all say, let's keep our good employees, but let's be really wise and very, very cautious on what we're doing. So it puts me in a very hard position.
Roger, can you explain to us the process at Utopia of when a cost of living increase or a merit increase is actually added to salaries? Is it July 1st? Is it January 1st? How does that work in your organization?
Yeah, historically, and the way we planned for this is we do employee reviews in June. We don't do an automatic company-wide increase. We consider it a merit-based increase. So, but the vast majority of employees come back with a positive review after our June employee reviews and end up getting the approved amount. And then usually it's something, a handful of employees where we identify, deficiencies or other issues that would make them ineligible for the increase. And so that's how we've done it historically, is we do reviews in June and then apply that increase July, whatever the first pay period is in July, is when that takes effect. Historically, that's how we've done it. So we'll do whatever you direct us to do.
Yeah, I think several of the comments from other cities where they've indicated that let's reevaluate this in 6 months. For Linden's sake, we don't award a merit until January, and so if one is budgeted, and so it gives us that 5 or 6 month window within our new budget to evaluate revenues. And so I've heard that mentioned by a few others, but maybe there was that misunderstanding. That's different from organizations, I think, in most municipalities that you pay a merit right at July 1st. And so that was helpful just to better understand that.
Is there any other comments?
This is Kane. I see both sides of the issue. We also are a city that is, right now, we don't have anything budgeted for our employees, and we've made the commitment to them that we would look at it at mid-year. And if our revenues were strong, then we'd revisit that. But I also understand that we need to look at Utopia as a standalone organization. And, you know, while we as cities aren't doing, are struggling a little bit with this COVID-19 thing, Utopia is going gangbusters and doing well. And so it's kind of a two-edged sword, but I would be in favor of putting it in and then having the management work with, maybe even kick it to the executive committee, which are representatives from both UIA and the Utopia board, to work with them on how the increases would be dealt with and when they would be dealt with.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would agree with Kane that I want to see the budget approved, but I do think we can give staff direction or even throw this to the executive level that those allocations of those raises should not be made until we are all comfortable with the timing on it.
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment to Blair Camp? I just want to add my 2 cents in with what you just said and with what Kane said. I also I'm concerned that we don't lose employees, and I know it's a competitive market. Even in this environment we're in, it is a competitive market, and I think that going to mid-year is a very good compromise, because that would give staff an opportunity to give back to the board some information on market studies, so to make sure that we're in the market. I think that's more important than anything else, is to make sure that we're paying our people in the market so that we're not losing them.
Yeah, Mayor Camp, this is Paul again, and maybe I'm speaking too much, but I think we want to send the message to the employees that we are fully willing to budget for their increases. But I also think our employees understand that we're in some pretty difficult times in terms of that. And I do agree that Utopia is a different entity than our cities. But I think by approving the budget and then giving the caveat that we are going to tell staff to take a look at this and not allocate those funds until we're all ready, I think that's a win-win in my opinion. It sends a message to the employees that the board is willing to support them, and it also sends a message to management that they can, when the time is right, they come back to us and we go ahead and let that go.
I agree with.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't catch that. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Robin, I agree with that.
Okay.
I'm also comfortable with that.
All right. Is there any other comments? If so, let's make them. If not, I would accept any kind of a proposal on this resolution.
Mr. Chair Pro Tem, I would make the motion that we approve resolution UT 20-03, approving the annual budget for fiscal year 2021, commencing July 1st, 2020 and ending July 30th, 2021, with the instructions to the management that they work with the executive committee on any salary increases, and that those salary increases are reported back to the board prior to them going out, and that would be prior to, not before the end of this calendar year.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it. It's Clint from Layton City.
Very good. The motion's been approved, been approved. Can we take the roll call vote? Krista?
Debbie Larray,
Aye.
Adam Cowie,
Can I ask a clarification on that motion?
Sure.
So are the raises retroactive to July if they are granted, or is it just moving forward? What was the intent of that, Kane?
I personally like the idea. We do kind of the same thing here at Midvale. We give our raises in December. So it's not a full year, budgeted full year. That might be a great idea to give us a time from here on out. We issue our raises January 1st, effective January 1st. And that way we're talking about budgeting for 6 months.
Okay.
So I would make that motion.
So I'll vote aye on this.
And I will also carry that to the executive committee.
Kane Loader,
Aye.
Jason Roberts,
Aye.
Mayor Camp,
I'd like to ask a clarification question also, if I may. What I heard the motion is that this board would be notified of raises, but not necessarily that this board would approve. Is that the intent, Kane, of the motion?
Yeah, I guess my intent would be that this board would be notified by at least our December board meeting of a recommendation on the raises. I would think that the board would approve that, though.
Okay.
I would want the board to be able to approve it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. With that, I vote aye.
Robin Meekum,
So my question is, so is that the case that we will have another vote before it goes into effect?
That would be the intent, yes. That would come in December.
Okay, aye.
Clint Morris,
Aye.
Brett Christensen,
Aye.
Paul Isaac.
Aye.
All right, that vote's unanimous with the exceptions that were mentioned.
Thank you, board. Great discussion. Great. I think that puts, in my mind, Utopia on similar concerns that we're having within our own cities. And it also sends a good message to our employees that we are willing to support them, and with the understanding that, we want to make sure that we do everything right and we don't, we don't neglect them. That's why I'm happy that the budget was approved with this caveat. Okay, next item is the financial update. Lori, are you going to give us that?
I am. We have the graph for recurring revenue. This graph shows combined system revenue. The blue line is Utopia recurring revenue. The red line is UIA recurring revenue. And the green line is combined. So we are now reaching up above that $2 million per month level. We hit the $2 million mark in December of 2019, and UIA hit the $1.5 million per month mark at about the same time. These numbers are through the end of April. We don't have the May numbers in this chart yet. The next slide shows, for your information, the UIA revenue versus the bond obligation. So this is UIA's revenue, again, averaging, getting closer to $1.6 million a month. And those lines show the debt service obligations. I'm sorry that gray box doesn't include the description for all of those. The purple line is the West Point bond, And the red line is the Series 2019 UIA bond. The Clearfield transaction will likely close in July and will add 60,000 a month to that. So we'll be close to $1.16 million in monthly debt service. And again, our revenue is, sorry, that's 1,060,000 in $1,163,000 in debt service, but our revenue is closing in on $1.6 million. I do want to mention that our average monthly increase in UIA revenue is about $25,000 for the fiscal year. So from July 2019 to June 2020, to May 2020. And then since January of 2020, so in the calendar year, our month-over-month increase again in UIA has been about averaging $39,000 per month. So incredible growth on the UIA side. And Utopia just keeps ticking along. Again, 50% of the Utopia revenue is the service contract agreement with UIA and the management fee agreement. But there is increasing revenue even on the Utopia side. The next slide, again, these are for your information. These are UAA bond issuances, but we thought that you would like to see these. UIA issued bonds that had sales tax backing of different municipalities. One of those, the first one, was the UIA Layton project. The goal of this project was to have recurring revenue that met or exceeded the debt service when it started. We had a capitalized interest period, but for Layton, that debt service begins in August of 2020. The UIA Layton project, the revenue from those connections actually reached the debt service level in September of 2019. So by the time the debt service starts in August of 2020, the revenue coming in from that project exceeds that by about $20,000 to $30,000. So we hit the revenue projection about a year earlier than we anticipated. The same is true for the UIA Morgan project. That debt service started in July of 2021. The UIA Morgan, the revenue from those connections met the debt service level by April of 2020, again, a year ahead of schedule. Our next project is UIA Payson. We're watching that one. We're just finishing out the footprints on that one. So at this point, it would mostly be projections, but we anticipate that they'll be hitting their target revenue much earlier than we anticipated. The last slide I have for you is that slide that we presented to the UIA board members this morning. It's the proposed accelerated repayment of OPEX to the cities. We discussed the repayment earlier in the year with the COVID-19 issues and the fact that cities are seeing reduced sales tax revenues. Roger asked that we look at possibly accelerating the repayment of OPEX or somehow providing the Utopia cities with some relief from that debt service payment, from that contribution to the debt service reserve that the Utopia cities are required to make each year. In this structure, we would pay off the note payable from UIA to the Utopia cities over fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 22, so that it was fully paid off by 2022. Over time, we have tried to match the repayment of OPEX to the increase in the Utopia debt service from 2017 forward. We've tried to keep it at a level equal to the debt service in 2017. That's been in the form of dividends or repayments to those cities. So the cities are still making their full payment to the debt service reserve, but they are receiving from UIA enough in the form of a dividend or a repayment to offset that increase from 2017. Because that has been our methodology, we don't want to leave any city short of covering that pledge. So that middle column is additional repayment to cover the pledge increases, a little bit more for Brigham City, Layton, and West Valley City. And for Perry, they were never assessed any operating operating advance, but they do have the increase in their Utopia debt each year. So this would be the first year that they received a dividend, if you will, from UIA. The total dividend for 21 and 22 is in the next column. We will have a few cities that have received more than what the note payable from UIA was. Again, that's to make sure that the increase in the Utopia commitments didn't exceed that of 2017. The UIA Utopia Finance Committee is charged with coming up with a reasonable method for distributing money from UIA back to the Utopia cities, either to pay back the Utopia note payable to those cities or to begin making some of that debt service ourselves so that the contribution from the cities is reduced. I do have more for you on a fraud risk assessment, but before we move on to that, does anyone have any questions on the items I've covered?
Roger, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Thanks for helping me. So from our perspective, you know, we had previously said it would be a really good goal if we could, while paying back the cities on the UIA assessments, also at least put a cap on how much burden there was to the cities relative to what was happening in Utopia. And so we had done that, and we were pretty excited about this opportunity to come in and say, hey, let's go above and beyond, especially knowing the circumstances that cities are in financially with the decreasing revenues. And so we took that from a 3-year schedule to where we would say, hey, everything at UIA is paid off, expedited that so that we're now on a 2-year schedule. And it's not like, hey, this ends. I mean, really what that does is it says, at that point, in the end of 2 years, everything that UIA has been paid back from the cities, and it's paying for all of its operating and debt services at UIA. So, yeah, we're talking about UIA and not Utopia. This is Utopia board meeting. But what that does is it brings up that schedule to 2 years of where we say all upside potential financially is now potentially available to relieving debt and expenses at Utopia. So even though we're talking UIA things, that schedule change at UIA is a very big deal for Utopia. Now the mechanism has to be sorted out. We have to do it in a way that's fair to the organizations and is mutually agreeable. Obviously the membership of cities is very similar. And so I don't think we'll have too much problem of coming up with the terms and amounts. However, now it's becoming a situation where not only are we, capping the burden to cities, so that's not increasing, but to actually be decreasing that month over month, we're pretty excited to reverse that trend in that favor for the Utopia cities. And I hope that we come back and next year we say, yeah, we had made this commitment to push down and relieve some burden to the cities and come in and again over deliver on that with even more. But we've got to gauge that year to year to see where we're at and how much progress has been made. But the exponentially growing revenues at UIA are putting us in a very good position, not only to cover the next bond. Part of the problem is all the upside or most of the upside at UIA is being used for new debt to build the network out. But we will be finishing the build out of the network as well as having that financial upside that could be used to finally, really put some pressure on the revenues going to our cities, which would relieve the pressure on the city's budgets on covering those original Utopia debt obligations. So by how much? We had talked previously about, hey, if we just build this whole thing out, finally get the thing built, what position would we be on? What portion of Utopia debt obligations could we expect to be paying for out of the organizations? We had hoped for kind of a 30% amount. Obviously, when those get paid off, then we could pay the remaining amount after the end of the term of the bond. That's way out there. But we're hoping to continue to dial that in and push that from 30% higher and higher. But that's, hitting that mark is still out there, several years as we complete the build of the network. But even that, there's light at the end of the tunnel to build out the network. We would expect to do the final bond early next year at UIA for that, and be about a 2-year construction cycle on that to finish out all the remaining areas of Utopia cities. And that's when really all the upside, rather than these incremental 2% or whatever, we could really, there's not much else to do with that money other than pay what we should be paying, and that's the Utopia debt obligations. So it's a good time, good progress that's being made, and a lot of effort by staff and our board members in the cities that support us. We're excited about that. That's my comment. So
Very good.
Okay, I wanted to quickly go over the review of the fraud risk assessment that the state auditor has developed and asked all local governments to review and present to their board. The state auditor offered an implementation guide which was issued to help measure and reduce the risk of undetected fraud, abuse, and non-compliance. The framework includes 5 principles: the tone at the top, risk assessment, control activities, communication, and monitoring. We completed this assessment, and it's meant to be a starting point to improving the risk of fraud, waste, and abuse. We scored 300 of 395 possible points, which is at the high end of the moderate risk range. There were several of the measures which would move us into the very low risk range, which can be fairly easily implemented. One of those would be requiring our employees and our elected officials to annually commit in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior. Another one is something that may already be in place that we need to just follow up on. It's requiring board members to complete a state auditor online training. So we will send out the link for that and some more information on that, and be following up with all of you to see if that's been completed. You'll probably hear more about that in your own local jurisdictions. Another would be having and promoting a fraud hotline. I know the state auditor's office has a fraud hotline, so this would just be our making sure that all of our employees are aware of that. 200 of the possible 395 points was based on adequate separation of duties. We were able to answer yes on all of the questions about whether or not we have adequate separation of duties. So I feel like our staff is doing a really good job there. We were also able to answer yes on, does the entity have a licensed or certified expert as part of its management team? On your staff, your Utopia staff, you have a CPFO and 2 CPAs. We are required to have at least a bachelor's degree and to complete 40 hours of formal training each year. I checked yes, that we do have a formal audit committee. We probably just need to adopt a resolution naming we have a finance committee. So we have a Utopia UIA finance committee. I believe there are just a couple of responsibilities we could add to that committee, and perhaps draft a resolution or adopt a resolution naming that finance committee as the audit committee. We are currently reviewing and updating our employee policy manual, procurement policy, and travel policy. And while we have non-written policies in place for credit cards and several approval levels, we need to develop a written policy. We address personal use of entity assets related to computers in our policy manual, but not specifically other assets. But personal use of company vehicles is prohibited, and employees who violate this policy are disciplined. So I believe we have a solid foundation for preventing fraud and abuse. And as Kim McKinley would say, there's always room for improvement. We do appreciate the work that the state auditor has done to assist us in this area, and we'll continue to work on improving our results. Any questions?
Very good, Laura. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the board? If not, we'll move to an update with Roger. Am I muted? No, I'm good.
No comments, so I guess I'm up. So I just want to provide some information on the progress of the network and the growth that we've had. So good information here, if I can find the right window. We hit a major milestone this last month as I pull up the right charts here. So we exceeded 30,000 subscribers in this last month, so we were pretty excited about that. As you see this chart of total subscribers, you know, it wasn't that long ago when we hit half that. So really just going back a few years. And so we've doubled our subscriber base, and probably more important than that milestone, as you see the rate of growth is very, very strong. That's not the result only of the build of the network, although we are building the network faster than we ever have. And that's reflected in this availability chart. So availability means how many addresses can get the service. So as we complete construction projects and turn those over to sales and get customers in areas, that number goes up. So yes, we are building fast, but the customers are coming both from new areas and from existing areas. Our take rates in our existing areas, I'll show you some of that here. We track take rates more residentially, but do business revenues on a revenue perspective. But on the residential take rate by city, as you can see, this has trended upwards in every city. Even those cities at very high take rates continue to grow in take rate. The only time we ever see these numbers go down has been the result of increase in the denominator. So, you know, for example, I would expect that in Payson, we've decreased in take rate just in this last month because we've finished a lot of area in that city. And so those areas will get to the good take rates as they have a few months to sell and people sign up and get on the system. But it's a little deceiving when we see it lowering take rate. That's really just means that we have some brand new area that starts at 0% and hasn't yet matured. But overall, things are very good. Coronavirus has further demonstrated the need for having this type of connectivity in our homes, in our communities. People are very, very dependent on reliable broadband. So from an individual home basis, we see more people signing up. We see more businesses signing up. We see more cities approaching us wanting this infrastructure, whereas this was not such a critical item to them. You know, we believe it's been critical for many years, but you know, it's demonstrated its importance more and more the longer we've been doing this. And so, you know, the Clearfield project has been approved at UIA. We had a public hearing on that today. It did get a good bond rating, and so we'll be adding in the Clearfield project into this. And so additional city projects are good for us. You know, people wonder, well, hey, we're not built out in our Utopia cities. The construction in Utopia, you know, it's largely it's a combination of many things. You know, one of those is our ability to finance those projects, and so we have a pretty aggressive financing schedule on doing these, and we anticipate another bond early next year for the final phase of building out the Utopia cities. Yeah, and that'll take about a 2-year construction cycle to wrap things up there. We hope to overachieve on that, but that's kind of the timing of finally getting all of these remaining areas built out. And then with these additional cities coming in, that's really not impacted us. They haven't been large enough to hold up or delay our construction because we've had this intentionally space it out a little bit longer than we would have to in order to make sure our revenues grow and we have revenue to debt coverage on those new projects, those new UIA expansions in our member cities. So, you know, it's like, yeah, we could go a little faster at the same time as we've talked about, the appetite for backstopping bonds and our ability to build and be effective with the money. It's been a good balance of building out the Utopia cities faster than we ever have. At the same time, allowing an opportunity for new cities to come in a mutually beneficial way and getting some additional cities built and partnering with the project. And those projects have been financially good for us, as well as just general UIA projects have been good for us financially. So we're keeping at it. The reputation of the service is good. We do break a lot of sprinklers and we go fix them, so we do get complaints out there. So if you hear those, please send them our way. We do pride ourselves in taking care of them. If there was a way to build fiber networks without construction, we would love to do that. But that's what it takes, and we're pretty good at it. So things are good. Any questions about the growth or the network? There's a lot of technical stuff I could tell you about how we upgrade the capacity of the network continuously. The technology is good and relevant. This isn't old or outdated in any way. We offer the fastest speeds available in the country at the best value. So we have the best price 10 gig residential offering. We actually have customers on it. The fact that we can support that is kind of a demonstration that the network is a full generation ahead of anybody else offering services in the state. So anyways, I could ramble on forever about the network, but please let me know if you have any questions. We'll send out the full subscriber report to the board probably later today or tomorrow.
Very good. Any questions for Roger? I'd like to make just one last comment if I could, and then I said this to the UIA board, and maybe Roger and the staff, Utopia staff, may not appreciate it as much as I do, but we had Roger come out to our city just a couple of weeks ago and presented some information on Utopia. 4 of our council members, including our mayor, were elected at a time when they were still able to see the darker days of Utopia. And after Roger's presentation, which was very, very good, regarding West Valley City and the status, all the council was just very, very pleased with the way things have gone over the last several years. Our mayor, Mayor Bigelow, as many of you know, has been mayor it's been 5, 6, maybe 7 years now. 6 years, and he voiced his absolutely confidence in Utopia. He was elected at a time when we were experiencing some pretty dark days. In fact, one of the reasons why that he ran was to really take a look at Utopia and see if we could get out of it, in my opinion. And now he's totally convinced because of the progress that's been made, and our council is very, very happy with the way things are going, not only in West Valley, but with the entire project, including adding the additional cities. So just wanted to give a kudos out to Roger and his staff for a continued job well done. Any other comments that anybody would like to make? Hearing none, then I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn. This is Adam.
Second, Kane.
Thank you. We don't have to have a vote on that, so I think we're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.